Now, on the Georgia vote.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
After the DNC, the Democratic ticket is set. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance with 11 weeks to go.
Also, turn out the what? The DNC saw plenty of Georgia flair. We'll hear from top Democrats and see how the GOP continues to target the Peach State's crucial 16 electoral votes.
Plus, we make a barbecue pit stop to visit with our voice of the voter. All right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
11 weeks to go before the November election. The two major party tickets are now set as this race heads into the home stretch.
And no surprise, right here in Georgia, we are one of the main campaign targets, and Democrats put our state front and center during their national convention. The main event was Vice President Kamala Harris accepting the party's nomination for president. She is the first Black and South Asian woman to receive a presidential nomination from a major party. And perhaps the loudest applause on Thursday night, it came after Harris made a plea to everyone across the aisle.
I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self.
Her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, offered himself as a Midwestern everyman, using his biography as a hunter, teacher, football coach, and National Guardsman. He appealed for common sense rooted in his Midwestern values.
The United Center in Chicago is about 700 miles away from Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but that did not stop Georgia from having a strong presence at the DNC, and several state politicians had speaking roles addressing the convention delegates from the main stage, including former Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan.
You don't have to agree with every policy position of Kamala Harris. I don't. But you do have to recognize her prosecutor mindset that understands right from wrong, good from evil. She's a steady hand and will bring leadership to the White House that Donald Trump could never do.
And we will elect leaders like Kamala Harris, who won't just empathize, but will act.
Pawpaw is holding on. He is hopeful. And though his body may be weak tonight, his spirit is as strong as ever. My grandfather can't wait to vote for Kamala Harris.
And also among the Georgia delegation, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. And we caught up with him while he was in Chicago to discuss the impact of the Biden-Harris record on his city. Their message to Democrats to try to get them on the Republican ticket is, what have Democrats really done for you? Are you voting Democrat because your parents and your grandparents voted Democrat, or are the Democrats actually doing something for you? Harris says she's going to do all this stuff, but why haven't they done it in the last 4 years? She has been in the White House under Biden. What is your message to combat that?
Yeah, these guys don't have the ball, so they poke fun at the people that do have the ball and is moving the ball down the field. Biden and Harris have done a tremendously good job at leading this country, particularly from a mayor's perspective. When we come out of COVID, after Donald Trump fumbled it and messed it up and was talking about put bleach in your skin to heal COVID, you get the ball in the hands of Biden-Harris, and then you get the American Rescue Plan Act. The American Rescue Plan Act, which was voted on largely by Democrats, not supported heavily by Republicans, but guess what? Republican governors, Republican mayors are cutting ribbons and having groundbreakings and showing the results of the American Rescue Plan Act, but they're not calling it that. They're just talking about policies or talking about things that they've done, but they're utilizing the money that comes from the American Rescue Plan Act that was created by Biden-Harris. And so when people sit up here and say they haven't done anything, I'm talking about affordable housing developments. I'm talking about things that have supported youth, the programs that we have across Atlanta.
Another prominent Georgian in Chicago for the DNC this week, Stacey Abrams. We asked her about the Harris campaign and her own political future. You ran two very high-profile races here in Georgia that got a lot of national attention. Do you see yourself ever running for office again?
I think that's one of the tools in the toolbox. If you want to make life better, that's one of the things you do.
There's an open governor's seat in Georgia in 2026. Is that something you're eyeing?
I look at all the opportunities and I evaluate how I can best serve. And so all options are on the table, but I'm focused right now on making Kamala Harris the next president of the United States of America.
What is the state of the presidential race as you see it?
It's hyper competitive. It is absolutely winnable for Democrats. We are on the ascendant, and I do not see the momentum stopping.
You have been critical of former President Trump for failing to concede when he lost in 2020. There are those who've criticized you and said that you failed to concede for several days after losing to Brian Kemp in 2018. What do you say to those critics?
I would say that first and foremost, my critique of Donald Trump is that he fomented an insurrection. He lied and misled this country, and he did his best to undo the election. I never did that. In fact, 10 days after the election, because no election results had been called, I absolutely acknowledged that Brian Kemp became the governor of Georgia.
Well, as for the GOP, Donald Trump seems to be changing his tune on Governor Brian Kemp. Earlier this month, the former president served up a series of attacks on Kemp during a speech at Georgia State University.
Somewhere he went bad. And you know what? Your numbers in Georgia are very average. Your crime numbers, your economic numbers, all of your numbers, you're very average. You can do a lot better, and you'll do a lot better with a better governor. You can do a lot better, just so you understand.
Well, this past week, Governor Kemp appeared on Fox News and said he continues to support Donald Trump. That actually led to the former president thanking him on social media and saying winning Georgia is, quote, so important to the success of our party and, most importantly, our country. Now, Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, he visited Valdosta on Thursday. The Ohio senator touched on border security and immigration during his visit and got a close-up look at drugs and weapons seized in transit through South Georgia.
And most importantly, Donald Trump believes that we ought to make our law enforcement lives easier by closing down that southern border and getting the drug cartels out of our communities.
Less than 75 days to Election Day, and tension is building between Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and the state election board. The board is advancing potential changes to how the state's election results are certified. Supporters say new rules will help ensure accurate results, but critics say the changes could delay those results and create confusion. We asked Raffensperger about it.
As I've been very clear, the state election board's a mess, and they've never run an election, and I don't know if any of them ever run a business either. One of the concerns we do have is that many of the counties have already worked through their poll worker training program, and all of a sudden you'd have to come back and do additional training because of these new rules.
Will your office be challenging this latest state elections board rule?
No, I think that probably there are other people will probably be stepping in on that. We're just saying that we didn't believe it was good policy. You
were under a lot of pressure yourself in 2020. Was there ever a part of you that thought you didn't want to be the Secretary of State come 2024 for another round?
No. Obviously, I ran again, and I won with a big margin. So the voters of Georgia understand that I did the right thing, and they're looking for people of solid substance.
That conversation happened in Hall County this week as the Secretary of State visited the county's election office.
Well, Senator Raphael Warnock not on the ballot this November, but working to keep Georgia in the Democrats' column. We sat down with him one-on-one, fresh from the DNC. That's next.
And later, our voice of the voter is serving up a tasty dish of Georgia politics. We head to Hapeville to hear what this barbecue joint owner wants to sink his teeth into this election year.
Well, we are back with Senator Raphael Warnock. Senator, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us.
Great to be here with you.
So you just came back from an electric trip in Chicago, you taking the stage for a major moment, a speech that really kind of came out like a sermon that you preach every Sunday at Ebenezer Baptist Church, getting everybody fired up. During that sermon to the congregation, as I will call it, you were speaking to America. I want to bring things back here to Georgia and ask you about, during that speech, when you were talking about January 6th, you were talking about the discrepancies we were seeing here in Georgia during the election. You said we must remain vigilant tonight because these anti-democratic forces are at work right now in Georgia and all across our country. You're talking about some of the changing voting laws. When you were saying this, was this aimed at Governor Brian Kemp and other GOP lawmakers that, despite everything that happened, are putting their support behind Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, let me say that the people of Georgia, the people, did an amazing thing when they elected me and Jon Ossoff to the United States Senate. I think folks were counting Georgia out. We demonstrated who and what Georgia is. And as a result of that, we were able to get all of the good things that we've been able to do over the last 2 Congresses. That wouldn't have happened without Georgia. The bipartisan infrastructure bill that Georgia's benefiting from right now, the Inflation Reduction Act and all of the clean energy projects that are coming out of that are literally helping Georgia to be the cutting edge for all the work that we're doing and the jobs that we're creating. And so I'm really, really proud of Georgia. But yeah, there's no question that there were those who looked at the anatomy of our victory and they went after it with surgical precision. It's called SB 202. And there are provisions in that bill, for example, one that allows random citizens to challenge the validity of other citizens' voter registration, people they don't even know. And we saw some 6 right-wing activists literally challenge the voter registration of some 85,000 people. And the provisions of that law literally tie up taxpayers' money and resources, having to chase down all of these rabbit holes under the putative arguments of voter fraud. And now we're witnessing right now MAGA extremists who are trying to change the rules for voting, even though we're already in the midst of an election. And they seem to be setting the table for people who know they're losing the argument. Otherwise, why would you do this? Why would you encourage counties for almost any reason to question a certification unless you're worried that the people are going to once again do what they did in 2021, and that is give you an outcome that partisan actors in our state don't like.
Let me ask you about the race to the White House, the outcome here in Georgia. For Harris to win Georgia, I want to take things back to your runoff race with Herschel Walker. You took that race in the runoff, 51% to his 48.6%, and you said that
landslide in Georgia.
Okay, all right. Well, you said, and it could have been. You said that you campaigned in traditionally red counties, like Forsyth County, Cherokee County. You didn't win in those counties, but you did take about more than 30% of the vote there. Does Harris need Republicans to get on her side to win Georgia?
She needs to play all over the state. And as we said all last week, our tent is wide. And you have the base of our party, but this is not just another election. There's a way in which, for all of our differences, I really wish we were having the same arguments that Democrats and Republicans have had over the years about the size and the role of government. I would love to be having that argument, and those issues are still relevant. But this year, freedom is on the ballot. Democracy itself is on the ballot. And I think that's why you have Republicans, some in this state, others nationally, who are standing up and saying that we've got to do the right thing. Then maybe we can go back and have those arguments. Like the Republicans who stood on the stage this past week, a lot of them are still conservative Republicans. And but they know, as the former lieutenant governor said, that a vote for Kamala Harris doesn't make you a Democrat. Right about now, it makes you a patriot.
Up next, our political roundtable with Republican strategist and pollster Mark Roundtree and Democratic strategist Fred Hicks. You're watching The Georgia Vote. Time now for our political roundtable. Today we have Democratic strategist Fred Hicks and Republican strategist and pollster Mark Rountree joining us. Thank you both so much. So Fred, you actually were at the DNC on the ground in Chicago. I want to ask you and start the conversation off with this. Something that we saw this year that we don't usually see with the Democratic convention was this sort of patriot, the stars and stripes, the American flag, chants of USA, USA. It seemed like the Democrats were trying to reclaim the word patriot, reclaim the word freedom. Is this a strategy that Democrats are trying to do to maybe even speak to some Republicans who might not be okay with what the Trump wing of the party is doing?
Absolutely. You know, this is my third convention, Charlotte in 2012, Philadelphia in 2016, and then this one. And it was really interesting because you didn't see this in 2012 or 16. And I think it's reflective of the time and the moment that Donald Trump has left the middle open, and his approach to governing and his approach to campaigning has really sort of turned off a lot of people. And I think the Harris campaign realizes that. And there was a very intentional and deliberate effort to appeal to those middle-of-the-road, perhaps disaffected Republicans.
Some of them could be right here in Georgia.
And it's a great segue, Mark. I want to turn to you. Look, Lil Jon was at this convention. It's highly produced. It's big television, a lot of eyeballs. But there's always this question of what kind of impact really does a convention have, especially here in Georgia? This is a key battleground state. Mark, are Democrats going to see a sizable bump from this, or will it kind of come out in the wash?
Usually there's a 3 or 4 point bump on a convention, and that's probably what she will get. You know, the Democrats sort of began in the 1980s of doing these more negative versions of conventions, and this did come off differently. I like your point about the chanting of the USA. You have not seen that in Democratic conventions anywhere in this country for 20 years, and that was different. That was smart.
Even as a Republican, that got your attention?
Well, it was something to note. I mean, really, the Kamala Harris wing of the Democratic Party is sort of Portland, Seattle, San Francisco. It's really a hard left part of the party, and they're not accustomed to USA, USA. They're accustomed to attacking police officers. This is a different messaging that they're trying to put off at this convention.
Fred, I just saw you react there.
Yeah, do you react to that, Fred?
We're not in favor of attacking police officers, and that's never happened at a
lot
convention.
of your party is.
No, there are individuals who have been there, but they are not reflective of the
and
party.
They're all Democrats.
No more so than I would say all Republicans are trying to overthrow the government like those on January 6th, Mark. So I think you put those two in the same pot, it's a misrepresentation. But I will say that what we're seeing right now is a attempt to reclaim patriotism, but also faith, and this whole idea of the middle ground. And so to Mark's point, something that I really hadn't seen before or in many years is this open embracing of this idea of faith and really having a diverse platform up there rather than left. I do agree. This version of the Democratic Party is hewing more to the middle than to the left.
Guys, I want to ask you, go ahead.
I did like from the nominee, I'm a Republican, just to state that on the record. I don't think anybody debates that. But I did think it was interesting how she brought faith into it by talking about her mother looking down. There was a discussion, almost the implication of an acknowledgement of afterlife. And it was an interesting point for a Democratic National Convention.
Guys, if we could hear, we saw some Republicans on that stage, a prominent Republican, Jeff Duncan, putting his message out to other Republicans. I want to talk about two here in Georgia. Governor Kemp and President Trump, they've had their history, and then it seemed like at least a bit of exchange, a bit of soothing over. Is this going to be important for these Republicans to stick together, Mark? Because it seems like the party is still a little divided.
Well, I don't think Trump can win Georgia without Kemp's support. And I think Kemp's political future is not over either. I think he has some choices to make about his future. So this may be a marriage of convenience. But I would compare it more to like putting together a professional baseball team. You're putting together a team of people who may not always like each other, but they have a job to do and they're going to do it professionally.
Or if Jeff Duncan says some secretly might go blue.
Well,
on that note, we've got about 20 seconds left. Fred, I want to give you the last question here. What specific issues will we see the most attention on as these campaigns try to win swing voters in Georgia? What are the key issues?
I think for Democrats, we're going to continue to laser focus on reproductive health, reproductive rights. And I think on Republicans, they're going to try to continue to focus on the immigration, the border, and maybe the economy.
And we're going to see a lot of commercials between now and Election Day.
A whole lot of commercials.
We could talk.
Thank you so much.
We could talk a whole lot more, clearly, but we've got to wrap. The good news, the Georgia vote continues. Stay with us. The voice of the voter is up next. We say it every week. You can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. And despite all of the noise, they are the heart of this election, and their choices in November could be decisive in this race for the White House. Today, we are headed to Hapeville in South Fulton County to talk with Chef Wade McSwain at the barbecue restaurant he opened almost 2 decades ago. Tell me where we are right now.
Well, right now we're in the dining room of Pit Boss Barbecue. I find nothing more pleasurable than people eating my food and telling me how good it is.
You know, you come in here as a customer and it looks easy. You make it look easy, is it?
No, it's very difficult to do. And, you know, as you'll see, once I show you the smokers, you know, we do it the right way.
You've been cooking your whole life.
Yes, I have. Well, really, I cooked the first meal, Sunday dinner for my family when I was 12. But before that, I couldn't even see, you know, on top of the stove. And my mom said, you know, get up here on this stool, watch what I'm doing, because one day you might have to cook for yourself.
Do you think about her when you're in the kitchen?
Always, yes, I do.
What do you think she'd say to you now?
I think she'd be really proud. So?
I think she would too. We've got a big election coming up in November. When you look ahead to it, what worries you the most?
Well, some of the situations that's in the world, happening in the world worries me. In the Middle East, how are they going to tackle that? You know, I guess there's always been some kind of unrest or things going on in the Middle East. That bothers me.
What's the single biggest issue that's going to govern how you vote in the fall?
Who can I trust to make an impact on the economy? That's the one I want to vote for. I think that directly affects everybody. Whoever that person is, whoever I decide, I want to know that they're going to do the best thing for America as a whole.
We always end on this. What are you most optimistic about?
I'm most optimistic because I believe in people. And I believe that good people, a lot of Americans, they are inherently good people and they want the best for each other. They're, you know, God-fearing, hard-working people, I feel like myself, because I see them in my restaurant every day and I talk to them.
And you saw Wade talking about his real focus on the economy. He says he opened his restaurant in 2008, and he said he's seen a lot of growth in the economy in Hapeville since then.
And I like the word that he used, trust. Who can I trust to make this better? And that's a big word that a lot of voters are going to be using as they head to the polls.
And a lot of the people we've seen in The Voice of the Voter. And the good news is you will be able to see another one of them next week.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you back here next Sunday at 11 for another edition of The Georgia Vote.